convene the Planning Commission meeting. Now come to order. So the Havre de Grace Planning Commission meeting for March 22nd, 2021 is now in order, and I'm going to begin by calling the roll. Chairman Ford is present. Mr. Miller is.
Which one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Harry Miller.
Here.
I keep forgetting that. Mrs. Shaw is absent tonight. Mr. Hartenstein.
Present.
I've got an old thing here. Let's see. Councilman Renzacker.
Here.
Mrs. Ware is absent. And who am I missing? Oh, I'm sorry.
Jim Miller, present.
Jim Miller. I picked up one of my old Planning Commission guide sheets and it did not have your name on it. And I'm saying I'm missing somebody, Jim Miller. Okay, so we do have a quorum. And we're going to take new business first in the interest of trying to get as many people out of here as soon as possible and not hold you up on other business that we're going to be dealing with. So the first and only public case tonight before us is building permit number 2021-0283. It is brought by Bully Rock Investments LLC, and it is the subdivision plan for parcel K. Okay. Mr. Graham, we'll begin by going to you for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ford, Commission members. As you noted, this project is for the parcel known as Parcel K, which is in between Touch of Gold Drive and Bully Rock Parkway. It's approximately 8.6 acres in size. And like most of Bully Rock is zoned R residential district. This project and this parcel and specifically was previously mass graded in the early to mid 2000s in anticipation of development at that time, which did not occur. The original concept plan anticipated 140 condominiums or an alternative of, I believe, 52 villa style units. But the last plan that I had showed that it would be condominiums. Today, they're proposing 49 villa style townhomes on the parcel. Parcel K will be served by city water and sewer, and those utilities are adequate to serve the proposed development. Students here, our pupils in the development, will attend Havre de Grace Elementary and the new Havre de Grace Middle High School. This Department of Planning and Department of Public Works have reviewed this plan in accordance with all relevant code sections. And we found that it meets all applicable requirements of the city code. And we've offered a number of conditions in here. I will not go through all these conditions like I usually don't. I only pick out ones that may be of any consequence or significant. And based on these are all pretty much boilerplate comments. There's nothing significant in any of these conditions that would draw your attention. But if you have any questions after going through any of the conditions, I'm happy to answer any of the questions that you may have. Also, just to let you know, the preliminary plan would be approved for 3 years if the Planning Commission moves to approve that. So there would be a 3-year timeframe with which they could submit their plats and get started on the project. So again, the Department of Planning supports the approval of the project and recommends approval to the Planning Commission. And that's all I have this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Fellow commissioners, do you have any questions of Mr. Grimm at this point? None? Okay. So we will next go to any representatives of the applicants that would wish to address the commission. Would you step forward? Be sure to give your name and your address, either business or personal address.
James, you can choose to sit there. We do have a mic now, or you can use the podium, whichever you prefer.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Good. My name is James Kiefer. I'm a landscape architect with Morris and Ritchie Associates in Abingdon, Maryland. We are the engineer land planner for the project. And with me is Mr. Robert Holwick, who I'll let introduce himself.
Robert Holwick with Bob Ward Development.
Also with us this evening is Mr. Frank Hirsch, who is the president of Morris and Ritchie Associates, and Mr. Bob Ward with Bob Ward Associates and Development of Bully Rock. Miss, I'm going to take this off if you don't mind.
Sure. You can drop it while you're talking.
Very annoying.
Same here.
Mr. Grimm made a excellent presentation. We are here in case there are any questions about it. We have brought a rendering of the project. The rendering that I put on the easel is what's been submitted as the revised site plan for the project, as Mr. Grimm mentioned. It's 49 villa-style townhomes that are envisioned to be similar to what the illustrative that I've put in front of the podium shows, which is a product similar to what Bob Ward Homes has built in other locations very successfully. As Mr. Grimm pointed out, originally the project was proposed for 140 condominium, apartment style condominium, which would have been 4 floors with 28 units per unit, with also some detached garage units on it. But we feel that this is a much better marketable product now that incorporates the property and the sense of Bully Rock very well. And with that, Mr. Grimm made an excellent presentation as to the specifics about the site. If you have any questions, we're available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do you have anything to add at this time, or?
Yeah, we worked on this. Originally had 52 units proposed, and the 52 units required retaining walls and a lot of chopping up of the track. So we kept working at it and came back with 49 units on there. Parking, we do, there is existing parallel parking along Toucher Gold. We are modifying that, and we do have a significant amount of parking within parcel K.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions at this point?
I'll start on this then. Is there any plan for the parcel right next to the gate where the construction road is? Is that for the future, or?
That's a parcel that's shown, I mean, it's recorded as an open space parcel.
Okay,
So
is
there
that
is
that
no-
considered part of parcel K also, or?
It's officially part of parcel K, but it's been platted as open space.
Okay,
It's currently, I believe, owned by the homeowners association.
all
It's
right.
not part of the development proposal now.
Okay, next question, you hit on a little bit was the on-street parking. When you drive up through there, there's signs on Toucher Gold that says this is overflow parking. Is there going to be enough overflow parking that's required for one per unit to cover the ones that are already built? Because the overflow parking that's on the street is probably the required one space per the units on the, I guess if you're heading down the hill, it'll be the properties on the right, and the parking spaces are on the parcel K side that we're talking about tonight. So are you going, is there going to be enough parking spaces to cover both of those developments? What I'm saying is you can't take from one and add to the other one when there's a requirement for the,
Well, I understand the question. It's my belief that the parking required for the existing villas or townhouses that are there are provided on the lots with 2 spaces per unit required, plus their driveways. I believe that the ones that were proposed and provided along Touch of Gold Road were provided as part of the required parking for the condos that were proposed, that we're now replacing with the villas. But in terms of number of parking spaces, they're currently, we believe there's 23 parallel parking spaces that we're looking at in that stretch where we're developing, and we're proposing the 2 on-site parking spaces for each of the units, plus another 65 perpendicular parking within that development. So we're increasing the number of parking spaces by over 40 spaces.
okay. And there was one other question that DPW brought up in theirs, and it was on their comment number 9, it said they prefer that the sanitary sewer not be located in the rear lots 107 or 1701 to 1705. Do the properties on the other side feed into that same sanitary line, or?
This area is fed by 2 sanitary sewer lines. One is a 12-inch line, which takes sewage from the pump station that is over on the other side of Chapel Road. And that was designed back when these were condos to route through the condominium development. And it eventually feeds into the sewer that runs down Flying Ebony Road. May I point to some things? if that's okay? So. That one's on already. This one's on, okay. So the sewer is coming between the existing units, I believe it's here, runs down, cuts across the site, and then discharges this way. Most of the units that are currently on Touch of Gold Drive are going down the drive and then connect into Bully Rock Parkway and go down to the sewage pump station that's in.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page. Mr. Whitty said you can leave it there, but you have to provide access road.
Correct.
Or move it, so.
Yeah, and Mr. Whitty and I have had that conversation.
Okay.
And he just wants to make sure that they can have access to it, and we would need to do that. And
Okay.
we'll do that.
And what was the total number of condos that were originally planned here?
For this site,
Yeah.
it was 140. It was 5 28-unit buildings.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Sir, if I may, just for clarification, the public will have an opportunity to discuss after the presentation? It's the map of the development, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Hardenstein?
So the overflow parking, just to be absolutely clear, is at the top of Road B, as shown on the plat.
Some of it is. There's a section of 5 spaces here, a section of 8 spaces there. And we've had a discussion with the developer about maybe providing some extra ones over there if it works from a topographic standpoint.
Yeah.
If DPW is okay with it.
It is, I live in Bully Rock, and I've had many warnings on my windshield because someone will have a get-together pre-pandemic, and there'll be 7 families getting together, and not everybody fits in the driveway. So it's a bit of a problem. The other I had another question about, if there are children in this development, is there a provision for school bus stop within this group of homes?
Yeah, I imagine the school bus might circle up on Touch of Gold anyway, so they would probably use the same stops. I'm not sure if a bus does come up that way, but within the parcel K, there's really only one cross street. There's two cross streets, but I would think their logistic department for the school district would keep the bus stops pretty much where they're at, if they have them there now.
Okay, thank you.
School buses stop where they please because they got those funny little lights on top. So everything stops.
Well, before we
Yeah.
closed the gate, the construction gate,
Mhm.
they were coming in the construction entrance,
Really?
picking up kids on Funny Side.
Wow.
Well, I got one more question.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Street names on the new cross streets there, if you got horse names going in there, not ducks and, okay. 'Cause on the fire department perspective, when they hear a name like a horse, they know to go in one direction. If they hear a duck, they hopefully go in another direction. But at one point, someone put a couple duck names down below Market Street, so you have to remember where those two streets are listed.
Yeah, we do have some proposed horse names and so the emergency services looked at them. And then we really have to run it past the HOA board too, but there's been a few winters since it's 04. So,
Mr. Ford, if I
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify kind of the protocol for the
Yes.
city. So whenever we have a project where there needs to be new street names, I always take those and I provide them to the emergency operations. And emergency operations takes those, not only do they address the site for me, they take a look at any proposed road names and make sure that there's no duplication or any other issues related to the standards that they use for road names, as far as, the length of the road name, whether it's duplicated and too many, they don't want commas and things like that. So we make sure of that before that they go on the final plat.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, any other questions of the applicant at this point before we go? Now, we can always come back to commissioners as we proceed. At this time, I would like to offer the floor to anyone from the public that would wish to address this application or would have a question. But if you do have a question, gentlemen, if you all want to, let's see how we want to do this. You all want to stay at the table?
Yeah, I would say
You would just come up to the podium, sir, and give us your name and address. And always remember to direct your questions. If you have questions, direct it to the chair, and then I'll direct it to the appropriate person.
Keith
Thanks.
Albright, I am at 150 Touch of Gold Drive. I'll start by saying that, I'll lower this so you can hear me better. I did go to the Bob Ward New Windsor project, that has the same type of homes being built, and they're very nice. So I was very pleased to see what type of homes are actually going in there. What all of us are concerned about on Touch of Gold is when we bought our properties, we bought them for one reason. Not for just that reason, but there's ample parking. We had parallel parking entirely up the street. So any home didn't have to walk a block or two to get to an overflow parking spot. It was right in front of your house. And as you know, today, not many families only have 2 cars. There's 3 and 4s in every household. So as I look at this plan, it doesn't appear that the amount of parking for the existing Touch of Gold residents is going to maintain the same, which we purchased that land. We purchased our properties because there was supposed to be condos, but it was laid out to give us these parking spaces. And when I'm looking at this plan, with all of these, with 49 units going in, I'm not seeing where the parking's going to accommodate even the new units going in, let alone the current Touch of Gold residents.
Question for you, where, and either you or Shane, you can answer it. Where was the parallel parking that you all were depending on?
Well, it's right in front of my home currently. Now, looking at this print, there's 8, it appears to be 8 parking spaces directly across the street from my house. So I'm fine if everybody from the new units isn't going to come down there and start parking in what you're showing for overflow parking right now.
Mr. Chairman. So the rules that apply to the golf course side of Bully Rock do not apply to the BRCA or the BRCA rules regarding on-street parking. In other words, you're allowed to on-street park on Touch of Gold?
Well, where I live, you don't have to because of all this, the parking that's across the street from our homes. You can parallel park on the street and you're not obstructing the flow of the street passage at all. It's just a section cut out for off-street parking. And when you're looking at the print, that's being done away with. Again, there's one section that has 8 spots in front of my home and another 4 or 5 down the street from me. But that's not going to accommodate even those on Touch of Gold right now, let alone if the people from the new villas plan on utilizing those spots.
Graham, I'm going to turn to you. Would you give us your best shot at commenting on this analysis of overflow parking?
Sure. The city code requires 2 parking spaces per unit. Certain projects require 3 spaces. This project, as a concept plan, was approved prior to that. So it's grandfathered from 3 spaces per unit. But the 2 spaces per unit is a standard in the city and the county as well, and other places. So those 2 spaces are met on site by garage and driveway parking. So they meet the minimum requirements of the city code. The city code does not address overflow parking. These are private roads and they're privately owned and maintained. And any provisions for overflow parking are at the discretion of the developer to provide that if he so chooses. Excuse me, I've heard some comments in the back. Please do not comment out loud until it's your turn, and please be respectful of the people speaking, and please do not use foul language. Thank you. So with that, the 2 spaces per unit is met under the city code. I have no authority, nor do I believe the Planning Commission has the authority to require certain amounts of parking over and above the required parking for the project based on city code requirements. So with that, I would say that it's in the purview of the developer to determine what he wants to provide and how he wants to provide that. And I know Mr. Ward is working with the HOA and is in constant contact with them. And I have forwarded the concerns of the residents concerning parking directly to Mr. Holwick and the development team. So I will let them address that. I will say one thing that I am unsure of, and it's more because I don't have the history with the project, is that that parallel parking was, in my understanding, it was a part of the condo project that never came to fruition. So those parking spaces, parallel parking spaces on Touch of Gold, were really intended to serve the condo units. The folks on Touch of Gold have gotten the benefit of being able to utilize those overflow spaces over the years. And there will be additional overflow spaces in this project, a total of 65 as opposed to the 23 that are there now. So that's my take on it, sir.
Next question is, Does the homeowners association have a controlling say over overflow parking, since this is all private roads? In other words, it would be an issue between them and the developer.
Correct. With respect to any roads that have been turned over to the HOA that maybe Mr. Ward does not own, certainly if the HOA wanted to undertake areas that they believe that they could provide additional parking, they could do so we would review that in the city if it needed a grading permit, stormwater, things like that. But anything that's not controlled by Mr. Ward, certainly HOA, I mean, they do their own projects already. They've done a gate, a new gate and things like that. So that's their purview.
Well, that's not exactly my question. My question is, does the HOA have the authority to require certain overflow parking in their approval of these subdivisions?
I don't have the answer to that question.
Because it is, after all, private roads. That's the thing.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
If I may, first of all, I'd like to thank Shane. He was very prompt on emails going back and forth with supplying information. So I'm very thankful for that, Shane. And he did tell me about building codes and whatnot. I'm a little unclear though, Shane, on one thing. The condos, when I bought my home, I was shown the plot showing all the condos. And they had parking for the condos within that area. So the parking that, again, is in front of our homes currently was for us. I'm not sure, looking at the plan I have in front of me, it's so small, but can one of the other gentlemen show me on this plot where the 60+ spaces are going to be for overflow?
I think you already noticed the 5 that are here. There's 10 and 10 for 20, and then the rest of the
Other 20 in there.
20 there.
Something somewhere.
This is 20, 25, 33, another 22 would be 60. 35, 32. Well, I mean, we had counted them for the plan. And we'll double check. And the other area that I don't know that you could see is we're going to look at, see if we can pull. There's some spaces here. They're in the eyebrow,
Right.
which we're not
That's
touching.
there now, yes.
And these are to remain. So the 23 I was talking about are just those that are
Only touch of gold.
road A and road. And we might be able to keep it. That's going to be up to CPW. Might be a site distance, that intersection.
Well, again, anything that can be done with the developer to overcome that so that we're not losing parking availability that we currently have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else from the public care to speak at this time? Yes, sir. If you would just step up and give us your name and address, please.
Name's Ron Stevens, 136 Touch of Gold. I was under the impression, I've been there since 10 years almost. And we were under the impression that once the builder, developer turned the road over to the community, after the final blacktop is on, it's then our responsibility to maintain the road, the curbs, sewer, the grates, everything. And we have been doing that for 9 years. We've had curbs repaired. We've had potholes fixed. We've had cracks just last year fixed. That road should be considered part of the association. and not the developer to come back in and take over that road when we've paid for the maintenance of it for all these years. And that's what I need to find out, why they can do that. We have to take care of the ponds and put new fencing up in there because it was turned over from the developer to the HOA. So that's our maintenance. And that's the way I take the road to be.
But the road is serving existing homes on one side and it's on the other side, it's part of this new subdivision that's being proposed, correct?
Correct, but there's 3 entrances
Mhm.
from the Touch of Gold going in there with the overflow parking as it is right now. It's 3 entrances. So there's still no reason why they cannot leave the overflow with those entrances, even or move them down a little bit, whatever the plan is, they have to move. But we still should be able to have the overflow there because we've been maintaining it.
Well, correct me if I'm not understanding something. The part that's proposed to be modified is on the developer's side of the road. It's not on the existing owner's side of the road, correct?
It's on the other side of the road.
Right.
The road belongs to Touch of Gold HOA, as far as I'm been told, because the developer finished the blacktopping and turned over the responsibility for the road to the association. So beyond the curb, yes, the developer owns that property, okay? But from the curbing to and out on the road, I don't believe they do.
Mr. Graham? Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, sir. The parcel lines as shown on this property essentially take in the entirety of those parallel parking spaces. So the parking spaces based on this plan that are there existing are actually on parcel K. So Mr. Ward owns parcel K and has the right and authority to develop that. So those existing spaces, again, are on his parcel. And if you look at the plan and you look at the existing spaces, with respect to the road, while this may be a little bit different than what we're talking about, Mr. Ward has, on all projects in Bully Rock, has agreed to that any damages or anything that occurs on those roads as a result of construction, he will maintain, he will repair those to the satisfaction of the city. And so I have no reason to believe that he won't do the same here as he's agreed to on other parts of the project. Again, I'll reiterate with overflow parking is that that is a private matter because there is no requirement for overflow parking in the city code. And, you know, they are providing, I counted 64 spaces, but I think I know where I missed one. You know, that is what the developer is proposing above and beyond what their city code requirement is.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Tarzan?
I'm not clear. Does Touch of Gold have its own HOA?
No, we have Bully Rock.
Yeah, you're
HOA.
under BRCA,
Yeah, and I've asked, but I haven't got any answers back.
right? It's, of course, you know, it occurs to me that it's in Bully Rock's interest, for example, in supporting the residence center, et cetera, to have as many homeowners contributing as possible to the roads, so I think that they, support development within their property. And one of the unfortunate things is that folks like you see a plat, you see an opportunity, you define it, and you understand it that way. But that's not, it ends up not being factual and that's, or not comporting with reality, if you know what I mean. And while I could see you're disappointed, there's another thing here. What you're saying, I think, is you have 40 units. There are 2 double car garage each one, and driveway each one. So there's 4 spaces for each unit. And there's another almost 1.2 1.25 units per or parking spaces per unit. So it seems to me there's, there's a fair amount of parking provided. It just may not be as convenient. I would hope the developer, and I think Mr. Ward will, consider the Touch of Gold folks and their prior understanding, but there's the amount of parking per unit strikes me as being quite adequate.
It seems that I'm seeing the same thing, that this is really not an issue of enough parking spaces altogether. It's more an issue of where they're sitting, how far they are from certain houses, how far your guests have to walk to get to your front door. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be the overriding concern. Is that right?
Well, that's part of the reason I don't use it, don't need it. But when people come to visit,
Mhm.
do need parking there.
Sure.
And as far as the other part of that land that's up by the gate, that is part of Bully Rock Association. They took over that from the last developer. That is theirs. But to address your question about having more development and to help us, I agree. We need it for the money and to build things, but the pool, our stuff can't handle anymore. These places are bringing in more children into the place now. And the pool's already having a problem maintaining it because you can't have it. And I've talked to them several times and they don't know what they're going to do, but there's a problem. And part of it is because all these developments are coming in over on the golf course side. There's going to be, it's just, they need, as long as the developer is coming in and building these houses and making it, then there also should be something in there to make like another pool to offset, to help the community to exist, because they're not going to exist with one little pool and one little parking place. It just doesn't work. And if I'm paying my HOA fees, I don't want somebody to tell me I can only use the pool on Monday and Wednesday and Thursdays, and that's the day it rains. I mean, right now, nothing wrong with the city, low hazard grace, but I haven't figured out what I'm getting for my tax dollars. I don't know where it is. We don't get garbage. I know we get some essentials because we come downtown and use hazard grace stuff, but as far as our development goes, we're not getting anything, as far as I can see. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else from the public care to address the commission? Yes, sir. Name and address, sir.
Ed Brady, I live at 128 Touch of Gold.
Mhm.
I'm concerned too about parking. Overflow parking across from me, there is none. My guests have to go 5 or 6 houses down in front of Ron's house. So I see that as a problem. And I'd like to know if this is the plan. Could you turn it around so people could see it? Kind of what I thought it might look like as far as the buildings are concerned. But I guess that's about all I have.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else care to address the commission? All right, I'll come back to the commissioners. Do you all have any further comments or questions based on what you've heard? Mr. Grimm, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we have a subdivision approval before us. And I believe we've heard everything to our satisfaction, I hope. At this point, I would like to entertain a motion. And remember, if you decide to move to approve, don't forget to include the 8 requirements of the Department of Planning and the 18 requirements of the Department of Public Works that are in your thing as part of your motion. If you move to approve, if you move to disapprove, you don't need to mention that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we approve the subdivision plan for parcel K, along with the staff report and the subsequent requirements set forth from the Planning Department and the Department of Public Works.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Did I get a second from Harry Miller? Discussion on the motion. Anywhere?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I believe that everything that was provided to us fully falls within the city code and the standards for other subdivisions. And as it goes to the parking issues that were discussed tonight, I think most of that has to do with the HOA itself. What was provided to us and what they've set forth falls within the city code. I don't think it's the purview of the Planning Commission to consider that. I do believe that that the residents up in the HOA, they definitely have a bone to pick with their own HOA about adequate, facilities for their dollars, whatever, and their parking. But I don't think that that has any purview on what we're looking at tonight or any consideration by the commission.
I would agree. And I think it's just when you have a parcel that's on one side of the street and you have it's up for approval and you have a parcel that's on the opposite side of the street, that street serves both parcels, the existing parcel and the proposed parcel. And if the existing parcel has enjoyed parallel parking up and down that street because there was nothing but undeveloped land across the street that did not need those spaces, I could see where they certainly not only enjoyed it, but got pretty used to it and came to expect it. But when a developer develops the next parcel, a developer has a right to literally tear up that side of the street if they have to, if necessary, to make that side of the street conform to their new subdivision layout and design in terms of driveway entrances, overflow parking insets, or any such thing as that, as you see on this plan. And so they do have the right to do that. And then they, of course, must restore that street to the standards of the HOA, since this is not a city street. But again, we are sort of caught between two places because, the city itself does not have absolute control over those streets. We're here tonight not so much to approve the streets as to approve the parcel subdivision itself. And we've done this over and over and over again with different parcels and same kinds of situations. Having said that, any other, yes.
Yeah, as the formal planning commission in the city, we're somewhat constrained by the laws of the city.
Mhm.
And what we're saying basically is this complies with the laws of the city. And I'm not sure we have an option to say no when it's fully in compliance with the
Sure.
requirements of the city code. So
And it would put us in a right position for legal action from the developer if everything is conforming and all of a sudden we say no. You know, it's kind of hard to do. You want to add anything, Mr. Graham? No? Okay. So we've got a motion before us. And a second, and any other discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call the roll. Councilman Renzacker,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Harry Miller,
Yes.
and Mr. Warren Hartenstein,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So this parcel K is approved by the planning commission tonight. Thank you all very much. Thanks for attending. Okay, the next, I think I'll just relax for a couple of minutes and let these folks have a nice chance to look at that plat. You all take your time. We'll just
I can surrender my map if they need. If any of them want the map. I'm not gonna.
Hey, Volney.
give it to them if they want it.
Volney, if you would just let the folks at home know that we're going to mute the audio for a couple
Mr. Rainey?
minutes. You just want to make an
Is it
announcement
rainy?
that we'll be muting the audio on YouTube.
Okay, so we're going to mute the audio for a couple
Couple
minutes,
Yep.
starting right now. Thank you. Okay, we're back, right? Thank you. One quick piece of old business and then one little more extended piece. The quick piece is on behalf of the rest of the commission. Shane, we'd like to thank you for these badges. And Jimmy, you suggested these. And I really appreciate it. I think this is a great idea. I think this is the way to do it.
Yeah,
Right here,
I think
because,
Mr. Miller contacted Mr.
This,
Seipel.
this is all we need to show somebody at the Bully Rock gate if we need to get in there and look at a parcel or anything like that.
Yeah, I have to tell them I'm going to look at model homes to get in
I
there.
can't understand you. What?
I said, I have to tell the guard I'm going to look at a model home to get there. And he goes, didn't you just look at one yesterday?
Well, no, this is all we need right here. This is enough. This is great. Okay, the next piece of business, there was a ordinance 1049 was sent around to us by email several weeks ago regarding maximum setbacks and prohibition of front load garages on certain city streets. And Shane, the administration, the department asked us as commissioners to take a look at the wording in those ordinances and to make any recommendations that we wished towards that end. And we did it. That process that we did was a little different than we normally do because of COVID. Normally what we would do is you would send us something like that and we would comment in an open meeting at the end of the meeting, but it was in all the cases in the past, it was strictly comments and suggestions and things like that. And you and your predecessors would take notes. We did not present it in any formal way, and we did not vote on those things. We didn't vote as a unit to approve these 5 things and not approve those 3 things that were suggested in the meeting. I, for one, well, first of all, let me just turn it over to you, Shane. Let me let you, first of all, give us a little background on this and on what the city ordinance and the state law requires.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yes.
So this ordinance was written after speaking with the Historic Preservation Commission and is the very first part of trying to get towards design guidelines for downtown. And so this is a small part of those design guidelines. And they were thrilled to be able to have something because and quite honestly, they don't feel like they have enough teeth or we have enough teeth as a city to really enforce certain design standards that are consistent with the development in a historic city like we have. So it's been submitted to them, submitted to the commission. I received your comments. And yes, we did do it a little differently because of COVID. And the amount of time necessary for staff time to be able to do a Zoom meeting, get that all together and do that for likely a 15 or 20-minute meeting didn't seem to be the best way to handle that. So I sent it to everybody, received comments, verbal and written, made some changes to the ordinance based on that, reported back to the mayor and council members that are in the administrative committee and we also have a meeting called a strategic initiative meeting about this ordinance. And then it was submitted to council and has been duly heard by council for a hearing like any other public hearing. So at this point, I have nothing further to add on the ordinance. I am bringing it back before the planning commission to discuss amongst yourselves based on the council president pulling it from the agenda and asking me to do so. The planning commission, just as a reminder, is an advisory capacity to the department. I appreciate everybody's comments. I'm not bound to accept those comments, but I do appreciate those comments and use them when I feel they're appropriate. But I think the system that we have in place now with Councilman Ringsacker being a liaison to the council works well. He can report back to the council the findings of the planning commission. And then myself as liaison from the administration, I report back to the mayor and those council members that are on administrative committee. And that has worked well since I've been here. And I don't see any reason to change that at this time. But at this time, with this ordinance, really, if there's any questions, concerns, or comments, they need to be relayed to Mr. Ringsacker. As you know, I've written it, it's before council now. And if council wants to make any changes, whether it's Councilman Ringsacker or any other council members, that's their purview to do so.
Okay. What does that ordinance look like now versus what it looked like when it was sent out to us by email?
It looks essentially the same. There were some minor changes. Only you did provide me some comments. I apologize, can't remember exactly what it was, but it was kind of a flipping of the wording on something that I had, and I took what you had and morphed that into that and clarified some things a little bit more. But it's essentially the same. It's more wordsmithing than anything else.
What are we seeking now?
I don't believe there were any substantive changes. There were just friendly amendments to like commas and a few wording changes on there. As for, when I proffer a bill on the council, I always do review with them any concerns I have from the commission members, from the committee members, and from any other citizens that have commented. Haven't noticed any issues specifically with this bill. I did speak with Commission Member Miller, Jim Miller. He did have concerns about a portion of it, but it was my understanding that that was resolved, was it not?
What's that?
On this, your concerns, they were resolved?
Well, we're talking about it tonight, but some of my concerns have not been discussed tonight. So let me start off with the reason I was so adamant about bringing this up. Under the powers and duties of the Planning Commission, under A, it says the commission shall review all applications for amendments to the zoning text and map and report to the commission's findings and recommendations to the mayor and city council. We did not do that on 1045, one about the railroad crossing. That was not discussed at the Planning Commission. We did not do the 1044 or 1046, I don't remember the ones where it talked about right-of-ways and blocking things. So we have a duty to review this thing. The initial email, I agreed with part of it. And I said, I do not support this no garage, front-loading garage. And in the original email, it said Young Street. And in my comment, I said, right now, there are 20 front-loading garages on Young Street. And we're going to tell 2 other properties on Young Street that they can't have a front-loading garage because the rest of it is either condos on one side, the lighthouse keeper's house, and the new, I don't know what you call the 3-story buildings that Alan Fair just built at the corner, but they have backloading garages. The Historic Commission made this up, and right away we have an ordinance presented to the city council. Didn't come through us, we got to talk about it. So then when I read the email or read the ordinance as proposed, it said in the downtown historic district, and one of my comments was, let's close the gap because on the Juniata Street side of the historic district, and I should have brought the map that I have that shows how this was developed. The setback will be a maximum of 3 feet. Well, the problem I see with that is anybody that builds a house 3 feet from the setback or from the property line now has to come before the Planning Commission to get request a variance so they can put a front porch on the property because they're encroaching into the city right of way. And
That's not correct. They don't need to get a variance to encroach into the right of way. They just get a license agreement through the mayor and city council. If any part of the structure is within the right of way, as long as I've been here, it's never come through the Planning Commission. That has gone to the Planning Committee and they've reviewed them, and then it goes in front of the mayor and city council for review.
The
And also
mayor and city
to
council can approve it,
Mhm.
but the development still should come before this
Yeah, that's not how it works, in my opinion. Nobody has told me differently, neither the mayor, the council president, for anything that's within the city right of way, associated with the construction of an addition or sign or anything like that. I send that to the planning committee, made up of CM Ringsacker, Robertson, and Boyer. And I get their comments and concerns, and then I prepare a memo that goes to the chief of staff and the city attorney, and she works on that. And while I have the floor, the ordinances that you referred to regarding the right of way and the railway, those did not originate from me. They originated from the city attorney. So I can't speak for the city attorney preparing ordinances and bringing them before the planning commission. I bring before the planning commission what I prepare that comes out of the Department of Planning. So those are why those ordinances didn't.
But as the planning director, it's your responsibility when someone brings something before you that impacts your department. It's spelled out right here in the ordinance.
I'll be blunt. I'm blunt with you. I don't think you have the authority to tell me what I need to do as director of planning. I think I'm doing a pretty fine job now. And again, that was done by the city attorney. And if the city attorney did it and it didn't necessarily pass through me as a written document that I prepared, then it's up to her and the chief of staff, the director of administration, and the council president, who listen and read these things in the strategic meetings and administrative meetings to determine whether or not it's going to go in front of the planning commission. I bring all my ordinances in front of the planning commission in the best ability I have. We've had work sessions on ordinances that I've put together, and we've hashed things out, and I've made good changes to them based on comments from the commission. And as far as the process is concerned, neither the mayor, council president, or any council member has come to me and complained about the process or requested changes to the process that we do. I believe that the chair of the planning commission and the director of planning, in the absence of any specific requirements in the city code that specify this is the process, I believe it's the purview of the director of planning and the planning commission chair to determine what that process is going to be. And if the process is not acceptable, then the mayor and the council president can tell me so and tell Mr. Ford so.
Well, can you set up a meeting with the mayor, the director of administration, and whatever Patrick's title is, and the city attorney and myself, and we can talk about this, because this is right out of the city code. Anything that deals with zoning comes before this board. Doesn't matter who put it up.
And it does. Well, that's something that I would suggest that you speak with Ms. Ishak about her specific ordinances.
Well,
If you have a concern with her specific ordinances, I can tell you that those ordinances, while I know you'll disagree, for various reasons that I'm not at liberty to talk about, or I do not have enough knowledge on it, I do know that those ordinances were very much time sensitive. So you can speak to her about why they were time sensitive and why she wanted to get them in front of the council as soon as possible. They did meet all other state requirements as far as how long it takes before they become effective and all those things. So
yeah, I'm very familiar with that procedure, but there's also a procedure that property was vested. And when you go and you change the rules in the middle of it, that opens the city up to a lawsuit.
what property are you talking about?
Parcel F. But anyway, I will contact the appropriate people, and I will point out that City Code Section 2525 spells out what we're supposed to do. And if the city staff is unfamiliar with that, maybe we can have a little classroom section there.
In deference, Mr. Chair, if I may, just to calm things down a little bit. In deference to you both, Jim, I will set up the meeting between the chief of staff, the director of administration, the mayor, and the city attorney. And I will attend as well as the ex officio member of the planning commission. And we can discuss that. And I don't think anything else can be resolved today on that. If we can go back to actually discussing the matter at hand about the actual bill and any comments on that.
So anyway, back on this historic commission that wants these changes, has the city adopted the historic district?
Yes, many years ago.
Okay. And what part of history are we going back to? Because on Union Avenue, there were gas stations, there were service stations, there were garages, and same thing with other parts of the street. Down on Washington Street, there was a blacksmith shop. Can we go back and put one of those in to meet the historic definition of the city?
I don't think
You
we
know,
need a horse
we're
livery.
taking away property rights here because one group that doesn't own the property doesn't like something about it.
I think you need to address it to Mr. Ringsacker. I've written the ordinance and it's before them now. So I can't make any changes at this point. I think Mr. Ringsacker is who you should address to, so he can report back to the council like you have indicated in the city code where it says that the commission must report to the council. So I would suggest that you refer to Mr. Ringsacker with whatever changes
Okay,
you
did
think.
you hear my question there? You're right next to me.
Okay, when we tried to deal with this thing online a few weeks ago, show of hands, how many commissioners responded to that with a recommendation or a suggestion? Show of hands. Okay, the two of us. And you did.
I didn't respond on hand. I responded in person because I was the one proffering the bill. And because of the Open Meetings Act, we couldn't respond to each other. Correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
So I spoke, I didn't respond in person, on email, I responded in person, but I did respond.
So the response that I made at that time in writing directly to the department, I stand behind that response. Unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me. And nor do I have the very latest iteration of that bill to see what did and didn't get changed in it. I'm sure that those changes are minor. Jim Miller, did you respond in writing as well?
I responded in writing and my comments were I supported the initial setback and I did not support the garage requirements anywhere because I thought that was too much of an infringement. 2 weeks before that, we had a presentation here showing all these new houses with front loading garages and how much money that was going to bring into the city. And then we turn around and we say, we don't want that in the city because we're historic. And, you know, nobody knows how the city got a historic designation because they didn't follow the procedures back when the historic designation was put in by the state. Because one of the requirements was there was supposed to be a complete inventory, and to my knowledge, that's never been done. They're working on it, but it hasn't been done. So somehow they jumped the gun on this.
Actually, there has been a full inventory, speaking from the Economic Development Advisory Board position. We've had a committee working on it. You can go to the site, the Maryland site, and there are, 420 sites listed for Havre de Grace. No, it's not that many, maybe, but there are 2,400 statewide. Havre de Graces are all listed there. The reason the city at least addressed to economic development and asked us to look at it was that the requirements of the registration were so prohibitive for landowners, property owners, they would be very restricted in terms of what they could do with their property going forward, whether or not you could modify a bathroom. So this decision the city made was to go ahead and list the properties, but not formalize the listing process. So they're all there on the state MHA Maryland Historical Society page. And it's a lot of them.
I'm very familiar with that
Okay.
section you're talking about. And so now the process is we didn't want to infringe on the owner's when it was done. Now we're going to do that and saying you can't have a garage.
Mr. Ford,
Yes, sir.
may I'll read into the record because I'm not sure if Mr. Miller is not reading that section of the ordinance. But it does not fully preclude someone to have a garage. The ordinance says, front load garages shall be prohibited from being constructed on or adjacent to existing or proposed dwellings along Union Avenue, Washington Street, or Congress Avenue, when a lot or parcel also has access to an alley, lane, or other side street, unless the proposed garage is set back a minimum of 15 feet from the facade of the dwelling. So the statement that garages are strictly prohibited and we're infringing on the rights and so on, that's not true. I'm not sure where Mr. Miller came up with Young Street. I don't ever recall that being in. I would argue that Union Avenue, Washington Street, and Congress Avenue are the three most iconic streets in our city. And they are worthy of some form of protection of aesthetics in a historic city. And that's why this ordinance was crafted. So the statement that we're infringing on somebody's rights and strictly prohibiting, that's not true. We're saying that under certain circumstances, you can have this. You can have it if it is a minimum of 15 feet back from the front facade of the dwelling. And the reason is to step those garages back so that they're not as prominent of a visual item or a visual aesthetic on the street. The units that Mr. Miller was referring to that we recently reviewed, they're not subject to this. They're not on Washington, Union, or Congress. So this has no bearing. What does have bearing or would have bearing if this ordinance was effective is the ordinance on the maximum setbacks for those units. But in no circumstance whatsoever does it completely prohibit someone from having a garage. It says you can't have it unless these two things.
Okay.
That's all I have to say on that.
Okay, we got to do two things tonight to be able to dispense with this item on the agenda, which is the last item. One is we've got to formally address our commentary on ordinance. There we go. 1049, so that it can proceed through council process. It is currently tabled, and it's tabled because of us. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So not having the most recent iteration of that ordinance in front of me, in other words, not having the one that was read that received its first reading, and knowing that it's little different from the one that was sent out to us.
That first reading and public hearing.
Okay.
So it got pulled from second read.
Before I get into how we deal with that, I want to get into what we should be doing going forward. And frankly, I'm taking some of Jimmy Miller's comments to heart. I do think we need to formalize our process a bit more when it comes to any kind of ordinances that are being proposed that have anything to do whatsoever with land use or fences, which is land use, or signs, which is also land use. And so basically the zoning ordinances themselves, all the criteria that's in the zoning ordinance, and anything having to do with sign ordinances, anything having to do with off-street parking and those kind of issues, to me, are planning commission issues, correct?
Correct.
All right. And so it seems to me that any proposed ordinance should be presented to us in its most up-to-date form, before it goes to council. And even if we have to call a special meeting to discuss it, we should discuss it.
And we have
Formally.
called it special meetings for
We
previous
have,
ones.
that's right. Now, the question then becomes, how do we convey our recommendations and opinions and thoughts on that ordinance? And it would seem to me that the planning commission would serve the mayor and city council and the public best if we offered individual comment. I'm not sure we're serving the process if we come up with 10 suggestions in a meeting such as this and hash them out, and we vote on each of the 10 suggestions, and we vote up 6 and we vote down 4, and then we send the thing as a package that enjoys a majority vote of this commission. I don't think that's doing them what they're looking for. I think what they're looking for is anything that they might not have thought of. And I think that can come out of the minds of any one of our individual commissioners. And therefore, I think that every single recommendation that an individual commissioner makes should be advanced to the mayor and council and to the administration so that they can at least see what's going on in our minds. And they don't have to accept any of it. That's their job to legislate, so to speak, and it's our job to advise and recommend. And we're doing so strictly from a land use perspective. We're not doing it from a political perspective. Mayor and council has to look at the other side of the coin on everything. So what I would like to propose is that going forward, when something like anything like this comes to us, we should have, I think a week is enough, but at least a week to chew on it before we meet. We don't want to be a cog in the wheel. We don't want to slow down the overall process because, like Shane said, sometimes, particularly when the city attorney has to whip something up in a hurry, time is of the essence. That stuff's got to sail through as quickly as possible if it's going to sail through. And we don't need to be something that just holds up the whole process. We meet every 2 weeks or can meet every 2 weeks. We can even meet more often than that if we have to. So I would say that once anything comes across your desk, and frankly, Mr. Council Liaison, I think anything that has to do with land use that does not come through the department, that comes straight from the city attorney or anything else, it's up to the mayor and council if they want that kind of advice. But it would be nice if they shot it through us and let us just take a crack at it. Then once we've seen the proposed ordinance, then if we can meet as quickly as within 1 week, but physically meet and go around the dais here and say, well, you know, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And let each of us individually say either I have nothing to add, or I would like to recommend or propose that this little change be made or that this be added. And then once we've gone around one time, we go around again because each of us has heard what the other's thinking. And then each of us might decide we want to add to what this guy said. You know, sounds pretty good to me. I'd like that to be under my name as well. And then this collective list of recommendations would then go straight through the department to the mayor and council. And I think that's pretty efficient. Would you agree?
I agree. I did forget to mention that I had this conversation with the administration, and they had no issue with the way it's being handled now and the reporting back. I have no objection to if you want to handle it that way, it's fine.
Well, the difference perhaps is that whatever we come up with, no matter how crazy, it gets all the way to them. It doesn't get filtered out.
Yeah. I mean, this is just as a side note.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be,
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of the right word here. It's been long. I've been here 12 hours. so,
Contrary.
I'm not trying to be contrarian. But the process of trying to prepare an ordinance here and get it in front of the city council is one of the most inefficient processes I've ever seen. The amount of people, commissions, and committees that an ordinance has to go through before you can get it. I've actually been successful in getting one of those steps removed. But the amount of steps that are necessary and the time invested to get an ordinance in front of the council is incredible. I'm used to, and I'm not saying this is right, but I'm used to preparing an ordinance. This is from my old career. I'm used to preparing an ordinance, taking it to the county attorney and telling them, here's what we're writing. And they check it for legal sufficiency. And then it gets sent across to the county council. And then we would meet with them and discuss what it is we were doing. And that was it. Yeah, so, there wasn't months and months and months of just circling and sending it to this person, send it to that committee, send it. It's really inefficient and it really stands in the way of getting things done. And I want to be clear that I'm not suggesting that we should remove the public from that because we already have a public forum. We have a public hearing for all ordinances.
Now, you
This
talk
is-
about the circling. If an ordinance came up
Yeah.
and let's say it touched on the planning commission, it touched on the economic development commission, and it simultaneously touched on the historic district commission. It had parts in that ordinance that affected all three of the purviews of those commissions.
Yeah, I mean, that,
Why wouldn't it just be shot out to all three of them at the same time with a quick response?
yeah, I mean, it could be. I haven't had that experience yet where it needed to go to various different, agent. More of the circling I was talking about is something that I've already accomplished. And before, like the ordinances would go to all the directors. So that was the first step. So it went to all the directors and inevitably, I love all my fellow directors, but inevitably we're all busy. It sits on someone's desk.
Yeah.
And then you get it. And then it goes in the read file. And then the worst part about it was I don't write in the read file, but a lot of us don't have the greatest handwriting. So there's chicken scratch all over it. And then it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? And then it goes back out and then it comes back and then I make changes and then it's like,
Well, let's go back to what it is that the city is asking of this commission to review an ordinance. And the city, as you've pointed out, and as I've researched, and I agree, the city is not terribly specific. The ordinances are not specific on exactly how we formulate those opinions and how we submit those opinions and in what form. And what I'm sitting here doing for the last 15 minutes is talking about a process.
Mhm.
Because since the ordinances don't specify a process, it then would be our right to develop our own process. And I'm willing to do that. And I'm sure the fellow commissioners are willing to do that. I would like for that process to be as little work as possible on our behalf and on your behalf.
right.
But if that information is worth anything, if it's worth even bringing to us, it's got to be sent back to mayor and council, who are the ultimate users,
Mhm.
in some form that does them some good. Right?
If I may, Mr. Chair, the main concern from the council president, why he requested it be withdrawn was that he wanted everybody to have the opportunity to hear what the others had to say about it, as you had discussed, and form updated opinions and hear others exactly what their opinions are and make any changes and make the suggestions to me. He didn't necessarily request a formal vote to go back, just that I relay any concerns. it's completely up to you if you want to make the motion to change our rules or establish new rules for how we proceed going forward. But I'm completely fine with taking people's concerns back to the council.
Okay, so let's make it simple, simpler than what I was talking about.
Mhm.
Now let's take some load off the department. Going forward, we get a proposed ordinance. And I really do think we need to get it in enough in advance that we can digest it before we come into this meeting. So then we come into this meeting and we take 10 minutes and we basically verbally express our comments to you. And you sit right there and take notes. And you take it back to council. Is that a simple process?
I believe so.
Are you amenable to that process?
Absolutely, sir. I don't think that there's it's necessary to have a formal vote about how the commission feels.
Well,
if each
yeah,
person-
see, I never was for a vote because
Okay.
as I said earlier,
But
what are we voting on? Yeah.
often we're going to see bills, which we've had where it's, they're updating
Mhm.
old city code that hasn't changed since 1982, where they're rather innocuous, where they might not have much deep impact, but it makes Mr. Grimm's job easier in like a few things about when we talk about the adequate public facilities, about adding
Mhm.
requirements for the traffic study. I don't think anybody here would object to the traffic study. Things like that, we can just agree on, chew up for 10 minutes, like you said, to go over everything. Be agreeable. I can relay that back. Like you said, if there are concerns, we can hear and again, come back and discuss again if any other concerns, and I will take notes on everything and relay them to the
Okay.
council.
All right, let's,
I would suggest one more thing in that is that especially if we have a major ordinance, like a major chapter rewrite, what Councilman Ringsacker can do is just ask to be on the admin agenda. And that way he can have the audience of the mayor and the council president at the same time.
we've had lengthy workshops on ordinances where we've
Oh, yeah.
sat out in the middle of the floor and rolled up our sleeves and around a table for 2 or 3 hours. We've done that in the past. Warren?
Yeah, well, first of all, going back to Jim Miller's comment, earlier I made the comment that we're bound by city code, and if the city code doesn't comply with the practice, it ought to be corrected. I don't think that we can randomly say, well, we'll comply with this and not with this. So it really needs to be brought in line with what the expectations of this group,
Mhm.
what they are. So if April Ishak has one view, I don't think that makes Shane's job any easier to have, different definitions for the same process. That's horrible. That's really horrible. Second thing is and Volney, I got two different feelings from what you said. At first, I thought you said make individual comments and boom. My appointment date says September 19th or 2017, feels like 1917. But I must tell you that I still feel like a babe in the woods in this group. And I benefit, as I just did from Jim's comments, I benefit tremendously from the insights from the individuals. And therefore, I would strongly support conversation because I think we would hone something better collectively than we would do individually. So those are my two comments.
Thank you.
I think going back to what I originally said, the code says that we are to review and provide comments and recommendations. That's all we have to do. So we should, anytime an ordinance is proposed that covers anything that has to do with planning, we should get a hit on it. And we should have a meeting and say, we support this, or we like this idea, but maybe you should consider not doing this. And that's our recommendation. When I was in Jim's seat on the planning commission and the city council, we were going through zoning changes. And we had a zoning task force. We had a planning committee, a planning commission, and everybody would get their cut on it. And then the final report will be sent back to the mayor and council. Some of the things were adopted, some of the things were piecemealed and, but that was my point. We were excluded in a couple of these things that I feel were important parts of our duties. And so, you know, I think that's all moving forward, what we need to do, and the council representatives should take that back to the administration so that in the future, we all get a hit on it.
Okay. Yeah, you and I are singing kind of out of the same hymn book. There you go.
The,
And even Warren. So let's do this. We need to take some sort of action on 1049. I responded several weeks ago as one member of this commission. And the recommendations that I'm satisfied that the recommendations that I put forth at that time were taken seriously by the department and they acted on them. At this point, I'm in favor of the ordinance as it's written. And I don't have anything else to add. Now, I'll go to you.
I'm also in favor of the ordinance. I will say I've had a series of medical situations which kind of knocked me out of the box for an extended period of time, but so I didn't get to review it and I've apologized to Shane for that. But what I saw in the ordinance was basically a lot of the material that we've been reviewing here. And it to the extent that it makes it fair now that it is public and policy, I like the ordinance very much. I thought it was
Mhm.
a good move.
Harry Miller, what's your position on this ordinance?
I didn't have a problem with that ordinance.
Thank you.
yeah, my only concern is I don't like the city dictating what people can do to their property. Now, I live in a turn of the century house down on Lewis Street. And, you know, one day it'll be a historic house of the town. And I have a front loading garage, so I can in good faith say, I don't think anybody should have a front loading garage. And you take the look at the lot sizes along these streets, most of them are narrow lots, so you can't put a garage on the side of your house. And if you put it back 15 feet, then you're restricting it to a one-car garage. Or you're gonna have a detached garage, which defeats the whole purpose of why some people like to have garages, but, you know.
But this ordinance does not address that street.
It addresses it. You can have a you can have a garage as long as it's 15 feet off of the. front of the
What street
house.
are you on?
What's that?
What street are you on?
Lewis Street.
Well, Lewis Street's not in the ordinance. That's what I'm
Giving
saying.
an example, though.
Huh?
I'm giving an example is
Okay, I got
what
you.
they've done is they've taken a little bite out of the apple
Mhm.
and say, okay, we're gonna get these 3 streets in the historic district to comply. And then we're gonna come back later on and say, well, now we want it on these
Oh, you go,
others.
yeah, they go cook the frog.
So, you know, looking at the big picture, now, I don't know how many people ride out and look at these things that we're tasked to make a decision on, but I do. And you look at the lot sizes and there's a lot of 30 and 60-foot wide lots and you have 5-foot setback on both sides. So you're down to a smaller house and then you can't put you put a driveway to a garage that,
Mhm.
you know, how does that cover your
Right.
your setback? So do you have to come to the Board of Appeals to get a variance for a lot line setback?
Okay, duly noted. Thank you. Thank you. Are you Got enough stuff now to take back?
Oh, absolutely. And as for my views, I have no problem with the ordinance themselves. I agree with the narrow lots that are there. I don't know how you would expect to have a front load garage and a house with the narrow lots and then the setbacks. That'd be rather tough to design unless you have the garage, only the garage on the front and then a pathway back to the house. So I agree that in order to maintain the aesthetics for our downtown historic district, this is more than adequate.
Thank you. Okay. That settles that. And we have no other business that I'm aware of. You have anything else?
No, sir.
Do I hear a motion? We adjourn.
Second.
Second. We're done. Thank you all for attending.